Hello and welcome back to the Educational Psychology Service online training library. Today we're going to focus on memory, and in particular, the links between students' learning and what is known as working memory. This is an introductory video, and the next in the series is a more practical top tips video. In this introduction, we're going to cover what we mean by working memory, the impact of working memory difficulties at school or college, and how we can assess or identify working memory difficulties. So let's start by thinking about how our memories work. In the past, the most common analogy for memory was the idea of the wax tablet, which gave us the view that the newest memories were the clearest and older memories gradually faded away as new ones were written over them. The more modern view is that memory is like a filing cabinet and that we have different drawers for different types of memories. For example, memories about how we do physical things like riding a bike, or memories about emotional events like the birth of our children or our first days at school. The list on the screen gives us some examples of different types of common memories we have. When we think about it, it seems obvious that memories for phone numbers, for example, are different to memories for how to ride a bike. So, within a list like this, we might be able to start to distinguish between short and long-term memories, memories for life events, memories for physical skills, memories that mean something in our day-to-day life, and memories that are associated with strong emotions. And modern research using brain scan imaging has shown that there are different areas of the brain that store different types of memory, including long-term memories and short-term memories for things we have just heard or seen. The research has added support to the filing cabinet idea of memory. It's also shown that some people have specific strengths and weaknesses in terms of what type of information they remember. But if we have different types of memories stored in different areas of the brain, what do we mean by working memory? Well, working memory needs an emphasis on working. The simplest explanation is that it's our ability to use different types of memory at the same time to complete a task. For example, a mental arithmetic task which requires a short-term memory for the numbers we are working with, plus a long-term memory for the rules or process of completing a multiplication question. So, working memory is not just about what we remember, but how we can use what we remember. Using memories involves the brain combining a long-term memory, for example about the 7 times table, with a short-term memory, for example remembering the question we have just been set by a teacher. And if working memory always involves some amount of short-term memory, the biggest limits on working memory are linked to the limits on our short-term memory, which are firstly, capacity or space in our memory stores, and secondly, the length of time we can hold memories in our mind. The capacity of our memory refers to the amount of chunks of information we can hold at one time, whether that's details of a picture, numbers, letters in a word we are spelling, or instructions. Research shows that if we are prevented from rehearsing the memory, for example repeating it to ourselves in our head, our memory capacity is smaller than most people estimate. The average adult can hold 4 chunks of information in their short-term memory, and this is even less in young people. The time limit for holding short-term memories is also overestimated by most people. The reason for this is that when we are asked to remember something, for example a phone number, we often use a strategy of repeating it to ourselves. However, when we do not repeat the information to ourselves, the time limit is just 30 seconds. We can also lose our short-term memories or store them incorrectly due to distraction or interference. For example, loud music might distract us from adding up the cost of items in a shopping bag, or a memory of a similar phone number might interfere with our ability to remember a new phone number. So what about working memory in children? Well, research has shown that working memory develops most rapidly between 4 and 11 years, gradually slowing to the age of 15 when we reach adult-like levels. Due to this rapid growth, the gap between individuals tends to become most obvious in classes of 7 and 8-year-olds and onwards. We would expect in a typical Year 3 classroom to have some children with the working memory ability of a typical 4-year-old and some with the working memory ability of a typical 10-year-old. And the difference between the working memory skills of a 4 and 10-year-old is significant and will affect a very broad range of academic tasks. So if we need working memory to hold on to and process information, it's easy to see how essential this is for learning. Children have to use working memory to complete almost any task within the classroom. For example, carrying out a maths problem with multiple steps where they have to hold on to an intermediate step in the problem-solving sequence whilst then manipulating other information to complete the task. And when writing, a child has to remember or create ideas, hold on to them, remember rules about punctuation and grammar, remember and check their spellings, and combine with their handwriting or typing skills. Young people also rely on working memory skills to remember and follow our directions, to check their work back, to copy or draw diagrams, to follow rules and make decisions in team sports, and all sorts of other activities. Since working memory is used in so many different tasks at school and college, it naturally has a strong correlation with academic achievement. Various studies have shown that scores on tests of working memory are excellent predictors of exam grades. For example, studies have shown that the single best cognitive assessment to predict Year 6 SAT scores in Year 1 students is a working memory test. And others have even shown that a working memory score is a better predictor of GCSE grades than an IQ score. And in addition to the impacts on grades and qualifications, there is a wider impact on young people. Young people with working memory difficulties experience frequent task failures in the classroom. As a result, they miss learning opportunities at school, and this has an obvious impact on their learning and progress. And we already know that students that do not feel successful in the classroom are more likely to feel that they do not belong there, and, potentially, to use disruptive behavior as a result of boredom or frustration, or simply through seeking support so that they are able to complete the task. Working memory difficulties are a common feature of various learning difficulties and developmental disorders. For example, working memory difficulties can affect a student's ability to remain focused on a single task or retain and follow instructions, which is also associated with ADHD. Similarly, working memory difficulties can affect a young person's ability to decode and sound out the individual syllables within a word, which affects their spelling and reading ability. They may also have a difficulty with remembering what different letters look like, which makes it hard for them to produce independent writing or copy from a board. Either or both of these difficulties are central features of dyslexia diagnoses. So finally, let's think about how we can identify students with difficulties with working memory, which could affect their achievement and engagement in the classroom, which is the first step or the building block of supporting working memory difficulties in the classroom. And these assessment methods range from low cost to high cost, and low validity or reliability to high validity. So let's start with the quickest and cheapest option for identifying working memory difficulties. And this will include classroom observation and reports from key people, including the young person. As teachers and support staff in a classroom, we might observe or hear about students that ask for frequent reminders of key information, miss out words in written sentences, report that they have forgotten their ideas mid-sentence, struggle with mental arithmetic, have a good long-term memory but difficulties remembering recent instructions, fail to follow instructions despite them being repeated, put their hand up or forget their question or answer when we come to them, make placekeeping errors, for example repeating the same step or missing steps within a task, lose track of their belongings, or demonstrate difficulty staying on task. The next low-cost option, which is slightly more reliable than observation, would be to use a brief working memory assessment, such as the digit span or digit memory test. We might already have a test like this at school as part of a dyslexia screening assessment, or we might choose to download a free version of the digit span test, such as the one on screen, which is also available in the Educational Psychology Service resource library, which can be found on the North Somerset Council website. Finally, if we really want the most reliable and comprehensive measure of working memory skills and difficulties, we could use a full working memory assessment, such as the Working Memory Rating Scale, or WMRS. This assessment, which costs around £80, includes memory tests for both sounds and images. It goes beyond a short-term memory assessment such as the digit span because it asks students to use their short-term memories, making it a better comparison to real-life classroom activities which place demands on students' working memory. Thank you for listening to this introductory video. The purpose has been to define working memory, explain the links between working memory and learning, and look at some options for identifying young people with working memory difficulties. Now that we can do all these things, it's time to confidently move on to the next building blocks in our pyramid of classroom support for working memory. And all of these practical steps are covered in the next video in this series, which is full of practical suggestions and top tips. Thanks for watching, and we hope you found this video useful and relevant to your role.